I had a good friend and a mentor of mine. He was 25 years in the Army, command sergeant major, never smoked, never drank a day in his life. He's an excellent father. He's just a really, really solid dude. And he told me a long time ago, and I'm not going to use the curse words that he said, but I'll paraphrase. And he said, hey man, he's like, don't associate or mess with no mother effer with no backbone. Right? And when he said that to me, that was probably, 12, 15 years ago. It probably didn't carry as much weight until I really started dialing in on the business. And I was like, well, what he's pretty much saying is, hey, don't associate or be friends or call someone a peer that does not stand by a set of values or principles. Because under the right circumstance, they'll collapse, right? Because what's the old saying? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right? So in that thought process, it was like, hey, the same rules should apply to business. And if we can't define who we are and what we stand for, then maybe we can collapse under the right circumstance. So that's what led to our core values and principles.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we look at using your values to create growth. We have an incredible story here. We talk about the core principles of the business. In other words, your values and why you should start them as early as possible, why you should live them, why you should hire, onboard, and guide people through using your values. Now, you may think this is something we've done before, and it is true. We've talked about values a lot, but maybe this time it will really connect with you because I've talked about it, how important it is to define what your values are. How do you live them? Well, today we're going to talk about using your values to grow your company with the founder of Blue Hammer Roofing. They were number 17 on the Inc. list. We have Nehal Kaiser. Nehal goes by Kaiser, so I'm going to just say Kaiser throughout the rest of the interviews because he asked me to call him that. But we look at why they started so early in their organization. Their company's only 3 years old, and they grew at just under 16,000% over that 3-year period for revenue growth. That's what put them number 17 on the Inc. list. And it all comes back to how they're using your values. And you want to make sure that you are really able to live by the values you have. Are you hiring people? Are you onboarding them the right way? Inside, we unpack all of those issues. Now, my job here is not just to interview people, but my core business is executive coaching. I want to be really direct about this. It's not a commercial, but if you feel like I can help you in your business get more clear about what your next step is, maybe it's more clear about who you need to evolve into as the company grows, or maybe it's just having a conversation with someone who's been through a lot of these conversations. It helps to reach out to a coach who understands growth-oriented businesses. So if your business is 5 million, 10 million to 30, 40 million, then I'd love to sit down with you and talk about, what's getting in your way and really understand how you can move forward. We'll map out a plan together. I'll give you some insights based on what I'm seeing behind the scenes. And you can take that plan and run with it, or you can actually hire me to support you, hire my team to support you and your team. There's a lot of different ways you can handle it, but the first step is you reaching out and scheduling a call. So go to genehammett.com and schedule your call today just to talk about your business and really get to the heart of it. I've been doing this for more than a decade. I'd love to help you become the leader that your people deserve and grow your business. Just go to genehammett.com and schedule your call today. Now, here's the interview with Kaiser. Kaiser, how are you?
I'm doing excellent, man. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. Excited to have the conversation with you today. We're going to talk about the 5 core principles that drive your business. Really honored to have you here. 17 on the Inc. 5000 list. I do want to talk about your growth, but tell us about your company, Blue Hammer Roofing.
Yeah, absolutely. We only started about 3 years ago now. So the growth has been incredible. I've got tremendous partners in the business. Along with that, we've got an incredible team. We're over about 100 people on our team now. So the growth has been pretty cool. It's been pretty impressive, and it's been a lot of fun, a lot of ups and downs. We do roofing and solar, man. We do roofing and solar. Nothing that's too sexy about it, but we're trying to make it a little sexy,
Well, I appreciate you doing the work that you do. I'm kind of curious, where do you think solar is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years?
Man, that game is insane. Traditionally what we see is we see a lot of trends that start off on the West Coast, right? The Californias, the AZs, et cetera, and they traditionally head over east. So you go into California, there's a bunch of mandates now. You go drive through any neighborhoods, there's a ton of solar panels on people's roofs. So what I anticipate happening is that movement is just going to get stronger and stronger. And I'm not sure if you recently saw the new tax incentive will now be 30% rather than the 26% that it's at currently. So with that being said, we're already seeing the government shift, and then that trend is just going to slowly make its way over. So it's great for us because we're super excited about it.
Well, I appreciate you giving us that insight. Number 17 on the Inc. list, was this something you had been planning when you did this? Because I always envision those that grow, 15, 16,000% in 3 years. They know what the minimum is, and they meet it just perfectly that first year they qualify, and then they just execute like hell. Or did you just kind of luck up to be, this is the kind of growth you had? I don't mean it was
The
luck.
growth we anticipated, being on the Inc. 5000 list, that I'd love to lie to you and tell you, yeah, we shot exactly for 17 and that's what we got, but that's not the case, right? But we knew our growth was going to be rapid because when we first got together, we put together a 5-year strategy, and it was based off of who we are, our core values, where we want to be, and how quickly are we going to get there. And so it was always meant to be this way. Truthfully, we're actually quite upset we weren't number one. So
Well,
we'll take
you had competition with crypto at number one. And I'm sure you looked at them in the news.
Absolutely.
They wouldn't be there next year.
Yeah, maybe if we would have timed this thing out a little bit further back, maybe we would have moved up on the rankings, yeah?
All right. So you said something in there, Kaiser. We started from the intention with our core values. So do you really mean before you were getting customers, you had values in place as an organization?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll share a quick story with you, Gene. So I had a good friend and a mentor of mine. He was 25 years in the Army, command sergeant major, never smoked, never drank a day in his life. He's an excellent father. He's just a really, really solid dude. And he told me a long time ago, and I'm not going to use the curse words that he said, but I'll paraphrase. And he said, hey, man, he's like, don't associate or mess with no mother effer with no backbone, right? And when he said that to me, that was probably, 12, 15 years ago. It probably didn't carry as much weight until I really started dialing in on the business. And I was like, well, what he's pretty much saying is, hey, don't associate or be friends or call someone a peer that does not stand by a set of values or principles. Because under the right circumstance, they'll collapse, right? Because what's the old saying? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right? So in that thought process, it was like, hey, the same rules should apply to business. And if we can't define who we are and what we stand for, then maybe we can collapse under the right circumstance. So that's what led to our core values and principles.
Great, insight behind that. I did not start my business with the same set of core values. If I had to start it over again, if I'm going to create a new business, I'm going to have those values in place just like you did. Give us an idea of how you're using the values today. Because I want to go, we talked about kind of where that started, and we're going to go to where they are today. And then I want to go back and look at, where you've come from. So how are you using these values?
It's in our everyday. Like, you walk into our office, there's a huge banner, and on that banner it says all of our 5 core values on there. And everyone in our company knows it. We talk about it frequently at our meetings. It's in our manual, our sales training manual. It's one of the first pages that you run through because it's what we hold near and dear to our heart. So the way we believe it is it's almost like the passing of a language or a culture. Because if our goal is to scale to 1,000 people, and we're at 100 people right now, how is that message going to be passed along? Right? If I'm here to teach my child the language of my country, of my people, if I don't teach him now or her now, then how are they ever going to carry it on to their kids, right? So that's what these values mean to us. And I'm sure you've heard of Jocko Willink, the ex-Navy SEAL. He's got a book called Extreme Ownership. His saying is, your people can't be what they can't see. So for us, it's like, if we're not living it, then it doesn't really matter if you just talk it, right? So we like to live it and we like to speak it.
Let's get into the details. What will we see inside your meetings or inside your onboarding or inside your hiring processes as it relates to these values?
Yeah, beautiful. So You come into, let's say, our onboarding process. You're in a full week-long training academy. Literally, page one, as soon as you open that manual, goes into our company background, how we started, and our 5 core principles. And I'll just share one of them with you real quick, and it's the first one, and arguably the most important one, which is family. And the thought process behind that is, hey, look, we understand we're going to fight, we're going to disagree, we're not going to be on the same page at all times, but at the end of the day, we got each other's back. Despite what may happen, we got to look out for one another. There's plenty of threats out there in the world. We've got a gazillion things going on. We had COVID recently. We've got racism. We got a market that's, semi-tanking, etc. But when you're here, we got to have each other's back. And when you throw on the logo, we are one. So and not only do you see that, but you'll see we have a group me thread where guys post pictures of, them out on roofs and selling solar, and guys helping one another out. You got a new hire and he doesn't maybe know the ropes fully. You got a veteran guy at no cost, comes in, helps them out just because we're family. We got to have each other's back. So you'll see it in different areas. I got a good story to share with you, but that's a big one.
Give me this story. I'm now curious.
All right, man, you ready for it? So here's the other thing about core principles and values. They are designed for when you have tough decisions, you should be able to fall back on these core values, right? Rather than on old habits. So I'm going to give you a scenario. Long story short, we've got one of our market leaders. He runs an office for us in a different city. I'm in Dallas, Texas. And he's a great dude. I've probably known him for about 6 years now. He's been with us and he's doing a great job. And I'm looking at his pay one day. I'm studying the numbers. That's where we spend our time, right? And I'm looking at his pay and I'm like, man, something seems a little bit off. So I send it over to our accounting team, who's absolutely phenomenal. They start studying everything, and they're like, yeah, we're off a little bit. I'm like, cool. So they study the numbers, and we underpaid him on his bonuses, and I was like, what, we missed like by $4 or $5 grand? They're like, yeah, a little bit more, like 80 grand. We underpaid him by $80,000, and this was only last year. So I'm sitting there with the rest of our executive team, and I'm like, here's what we found. And without fail, it was like, okay, tough decision, $80,000, what are we going to do? What's our first core principle? Family. So we just fell back onto that, and that said, hey, if that was someone who's like my brother or my whatever, what's the right thing to do? I called him up. I was like, hey, man, we messed up your bonus. He was like, man, what is it, like a few grand? I'm like, yeah, something like that. I didn't tell him the dollar amount, and then we wired it to him, and he saw like $80-something thousand. He called me. He's like, yo, you guys made a mistake, man. And I was like, yeah, we definitely made a mistake. I'm sorry we underpaid you, man. And he was like, oh, so this is accurate? I'm like, yeah, it's accurate, man. So enjoy. And so that's who we are. And it's important to define that, right? On tough decisions.
Now, hold on a second. Kaiser's been talking about how values are designed for the tough times. And I agree. Your values will help you and your people through tough times because it gives you that North Star that you need, something that you can, ground yourself in, what you stand for, what you believe. And people will be able to feel empowered because they can operate inside those boundaries. But it's also good for the good times. It's also good for the times when things are, really bad, right? The tough times, and then there was really tough times. Like the values help you through all of these stages. When it's really good, it's easy. And it's really a good time to have those things aligned. When things are not the way you want them to be, maybe you need to go back and look at your values to see if they are something that you're living. You got to use your values to grow your company. That's what we've been talking about here with Kaiser. Now back to the interview. I kind of love the story there of surprising him. It's the whole, I didn't get it. We didn't win the game kind of thing you played. And then you surprise him. That had to shock him beyond belief.
Yeah, it did. I'm gonna tell you something really cool about this. So then we had our company gala that like probably 60 days later. He rushes the stage because we're doing announcements and stuff, and it's the coolest thing, man. And I even wore this watch. He went up there and he gifted me this Rolex in front of probably about 200 people. And just as whether there was a token of appreciation for that or our friendship or whatever it is. And when you do good things, just great things come back your way, right? So absolutely blessed.
I want to make sure I heard that right. So we've got a key performer in another market. You underpaid him. He was excited that you guys made it right. And he decided to use some of that money to give you a gift that probably cost 10,000 plus.
Exactly.
That's the kind of loyalty. That's the kind of loyalty that I think a lot of leaders were like, how do we make more of that? I am impressed with what you guys are building here. I mean, 3 years into a business, having this kind of growth is really rare, right? I know it would have been great to be number one, but I know you're proud of where you are. 16,000, almost 16,000% in 3 years. When you were, in the early days of forming this team and hiring people that had the values, are you hiring based on skill fit or value fit, or is it a mixture of both for you?
That's actually a great question. We're hiring based off of value. So here's the wild thing, Gene. When you sit there and you're sitting there with an applicant, right? Here's the thing. Anyone can like rely on a resume and say, because it's the wildest thing. We sit in front of somebody and they're all top performers at their old job, right? They're always the top guy and all the rest of it. So that's always the story. But what we hire based off is value. So imagine sitting in front of me or one of our, our hiring manager, and he's sitting there and he's telling you our 5 core values and how important they are, and he's giving you the story behind it. One of two things is going to happen, Gene. Either you're going to see that and you're going to be like, wow, I want to be a part of this thing. These guys are the real deal. Or you're going to be like, holy smokes, this shit is too much. I just wanted to sell some roofs, man. I got to go. So we're either attracting you because of what we stand for, or we're repelling you. So those values, they're everything.
Do you have a favorite question that you're willing to share with us? Because I know that sometimes these are a little secret, but something that helps you attune into, do their values align with the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually a very simple question that I'm sure you've heard a gazillion times, but it's all about how you analyze the response, yeah? So my first question, 4 words, hey, tell me about you. And I just zip it, and I'm listening for anything that's going to be in alignment with our values. So for instance, someone's like, well, hey, I'm a mother, I've got 3 kids and this and that. Okay, immediately, I asked you a very open-ended question and you went immediately to family. Therefore, you must value that. Right? So I'm paying attention, and then we'll see where that conversation goes. So we'll study that. If someone's like, yeah, I was the vice president here, and then I ran this and I ran that business and did all these other things, maybe there's quite possibly an ego issue there, not 100% of the time, but we're just studying for these little cues. And when you pay attention, you see a lot of people where they either direction the answer goes here or the answer goes there. And then you just kind of build up off of that. Super simple question, but it's more about just studying the response than it is the actual question.
Now, Kaiser talking about his favorite question inside of interviews. And I want to tell you mine. There's 2 parts to this question. So the first part is, tell me about a time when you had a big goal that you did not hit. Now, that question is meant to elicit them telling you about something that they really wanted to make happen, but it didn't happen. The part 2 question is the key. And it's this: why didn't you get there? When you look for people and they give them the answers, what you're looking for is for those that take ownership and not blaming others. If they said they didn't do it because something else happened to them, then they're a victim. If they said it because, you know what, I did not organize myself and focus the way I needed to, I got distracted by some other stuff, I take ownership of that goal. And I decided that I needed something else first. You want to hire people who take ownership. I think you can see that. So this question will help you determine if you have people that are willing to blame others or take ownership of their work and of their experience. That's what I use as my favorite question to hire people. Back to the interview with Kaiser. When you talk about core values, it gets me excited. I've got this book that's going to come out whenever I have a chance to sit down and write it. And I've written books before. It's just that we're focused on growing other parts of the business right now. And it's just really not that important for us to document this process. But I find that a lot of people underuse values. There was a term that I was speaking in an event. Brene Brown said, do you operationalize your values? You've probably heard this before. Do you know who Brene Brown is?
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you operationalize your values? And a group of 1,000 people, she was a keynote speaker, I'm coming on after her, only 17 people raised their hand, said that we operationalize their values. I would imagine that you've got 100 people that if they were in that same conference, they would have raised their hand because it's a central part of everything you guys do for these values and core principles. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, well, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Our 5th core value is the pursuit of excellence. And Gene, that talks a lot about, probably associates with our growth and who we've become and who we want to, continue to become. And our guys know that. We're not here to be, second best, but we're here to give it our all day in, day out. And, the chips must fall where they may, right? That doesn't mean we're going to fall number 1 every time, but we can't leave the field and we can't go home if we didn't do what we needed to do for the day. And that's just pure effort. And I don't know if you've heard much of like Coach John Wooden, the UCLA coach, man, but he talks a lot about that. And he's like, sometimes the scoreboard may not tell the true tale, because if you gave it your all and you didn't win, hey, I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with even if we win, but you didn't give it your all. And for us, it's the same thought process. Just leave it all out in the field.
Kaiser, you had mentioned before that you're a part of some CEO groups. I'm sure you've got peers that are CEOs and founders of companies. I feel like you probably talk about your values quite often. Did they ever go to you and say, dude, let it go? Like, this is not as important as you think it is?
Yeah, of course, man, because it's so simple, right? And people, and you know, right? You also coach business owners, and they want like this, fix it magic. Like, what's that one thing that you do? And it's like, no, it's not. There's no like true secret to the game. But like, if you can't define who you are as a man, as a business, whatever, then like, what do you stand for? And when I tell people that, they're like, yeah, I get it, but like, what's really the sauce? And it's like, okay, well, if that's your foundation, and we all know you can't build on shoddy foundation, right? So all the time, you're pressured. It's like, it's not that big, but it is a big deal. It's a huge deal. It's everything.
You've shared with us a lot about these core values. I want to ask you one follow-up question here, and it really is about you. I feel like the values are usually come from the founders, and you probably live these things for even before you got here. And how do you plan to evolve as a leader as this company goes to another stage? Because every company goes through different levels. They plateau, they stabilize, and then they hit another phase of growth, and it requires the leader evolving. How do you evolve as a leader, Kaiser?
Yeah, great question. So that's actually one of the big reasons why I joined that mastermind, is because I wanted to be around a lot of like-minded individuals. And Gene, there's guys in there that are billionaires. There's guys that are in there multimillionaires. There's guys in there that have sold to private equity, M&A. They've done some just tremendous things that I didn't even know existed at some point, right? So me being a student of the game, the Japanese call it shoshin, and it's having a beginner's mind. So you'll catch me, and we read with our team, but you'll always catch me reading a book on something new. You'll catch me in groups, networks, masterminds, attending events where I can just extract some knowledge and then add some value as well. Because you're right. Who we were to get to 30 mil last year is not who we can be to get to 100 mil next year. We must evolve. And I think one of the fastest ways to do it is by putting yourself in a group of very powerful, influential, and positive people. Because, man, they're going to challenge you.
You know, a lot of people can't stand the heat of challenge. And we have this question quite often inside of the circles of leadership development and even the CEOs. And those that can stand in the face of, evolving and growing are those that are actually able to have the things they want in life, whether it be money, whether it be power, whether it be influence, could be family, it could be time off and freedom, it could be relationships. You've got to be willing to take that truth. And it sounds like you're doing the work. Appreciate you being here, Kaiser, sharing with us your journey. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Wow, what a powerful interview. He's so fired up about his principles and the values. Using your values to grow your company may not be a new concept for you, but you may put other things ahead of it. My job is to help you understand the power of these values and really figure out how do you align people around it. Because here's the real core of it. It's really hard for them to be empowered when you don't have values to guide them and make the decisions that are necessary. Those values are critical to your company growth. Appreciate you listening in today. If there's anything I can do to help you grow your company, lead more powerfully, or develop your emerging class of leaders, make sure you reach out. My name is Gene Hammett. When you think of leadership and you think of growth, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, live with courage. We'll see you next time.